Everyone's true feelings finally get put on the table as the Aspen trip kicks off with everyone being called out on their BS, creating reality TV gold with Heather being unmasked as she threatens the show and her castmates. Later, we will get into what former cast member Kelly Dodd had to say about all of this and what she exposed about the behind the scenes of this episode and this season so far. All that and more in this 15th episode of season 16 of Real Housewives of Orange County, Recap and React. If you are here live, make sure to say hello in the chat and share your thoughts as I share mine throughout this recap. Those of you on the replay, make sure to say hello as well wherever you are able to and wherever you are tuning in. And with that said, we are going to jump right into the recap. Like I said, make sure to share any thoughts you have in the chat. And let's keep going. So we start off with everyone packing for Aspen, as Noella is specifically recounting how lovely Gina's party was last episode, her launch party for her skincare line, but says she hopes that she didn't jinx it by saying that, and basically just says she only hopes things can go up from here. Now, if you watched the episode already, you know that may or may not exactly happen. You can probably guess. They're telling us this for a reason. But anyways, Heather is now shopping with her Nick, not me, Nick, for some gear for them to hike and whatnot, as they are going to do some archery as well as what we learn here. But it should be interesting. And this was supposed to be a fun, relatable scene with Heather and her son, but he made a comment saying she better be careful because Noella might try to sling a bow and arrow or whatever at Heather, which indicates to me that Heather tells her kids basically everything, including the drama between her and her friends. Of course, her twins are almost 18 years old, so they can probably handle it more than her younger kids, but I just thought that was an interesting thing. But anyways, now we're with Shannon, who is packing with her boyfriend John, who is holding her hand, packing for 50-degree weather, being her usual whiny damsel in distress self, and says that she's just going to try to be cordial with Gina on the trip. Now, I can imagine that's probably not going to happen, knowing what the preview showed us, but also I shouldn't be hating too much on Shannon, considering I don't own really any cold weather clothes. I'm from Southern California, Orange County as well, so I did not grow up going to the mountains or the snow as much, even though there are some in the area. Anyways, I just like to bag on Shannon sometimes because that whiny kind of like, help me, help this, whatever, always bothers me. Anyways, so the girls are now all arriving in Aspen via private plane, this time all together, including Noella, which was unlike the Cabo trip, but they arrived to the beautiful end of fall mountains and scenery of green, red, and yellow trees, as you see here as they arrived to the Airbnb or whatever it was, which says here 7-bedroom, 7-bathroom house, similar to kind of the lodge that the Beverly Hills Housewives did at the beginning of their season in Lake Tahoe, which that's what it kind of reminded me of. But the snow-topped mountains are all around them, as well as they pull up to the Hillside Mansion Lodge, which is not a sweat lodge this time, which they're probably very excited to differentiate between. But Heather then takes over the trip right away as they walk up a flight of stairs to the front door to begin the grand tour. And they go into the whole picking of the bedrooms, where Heather is already annoyed by Noella seemingly wanting every room in the house. But then Heather wants the same room that Noella wants, where Noella's giving this excuse that it fits her lifestyle and how she usually is the one that closes down the party, so she wants the one on the bottom floor so she doesn't disrupt everybody. Heather then gives in, taking basically the path of least resistance at this point after Noella pulled the "well, my dad did just die" card out to kind of subtly hint at wanting the best room with kind of a laugh. And it just seems at this point, no matter what, Noella and Heather are going to rub each other the wrong way. In the after show, Noella was saying she wasn't being serious, although she was kind of like wanting the best room, so she was willing to do anything at that point. Of course, the other girls in the after show were like, it was so gross and blah, 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 what a poor move. Whatever. At this point, like I said, Noella's just rubbing everybody the wrong way. It does seem, though, that OC was one of the few franchises where picking rooms isn't the huge ordeal and drama. But if this trip starting off this way is any indication, then that might be changing in the future. But go to my last couple of recaps after we finish here to hear kind of my thoughts on the whole Noella and her dad storyline and how he passed and what I think of that whole thing. But anyways, I want to just touch on one more thing here, which is what I have pictured here if you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify. Heather was holding the board game Trouble in her hand as they walked into the house. I thought it was weird. I wondered maybe they were playing it on the plane or in the car ride over, or was this some subtle hint as to what was going to happen this trip? I don't know. It was very weird the way she was holding it and being very certain as showing the name of the game to the camera. I don't know. Let me know if you thought anything of this. Anyways, let's keep going to another fake out of how great this trip and how much everyone's going to get along is where Gina gets a strike on her first attempt at testing the indoor bowling alley of the house, which was built into a mine in the side of the mountain. I thought that was pretty cool. The house was pretty sick, I'm not going to lie. And after everyone settles into their rooms, we then have to see Heather, for way longer than I want to, unpacking a few things out of her suitcase with like no music in the background, no entertaining anything. And so I just thought it was kind of useless unless this was edited in to make Heather look more likable and relatable in a season that has her not looking so much like that, in my opinion. But anyways, we're now getting the IV cocktails of an oxygen treatment, whatever it is, according to Noella, to acclimate to the altitude so they can drink more. Now, it looked like they were in Dune or something, because I remember seeing the previews, that even though I didn't see the movie, where they had the oxygen on and then drinking some like Star Wars sci-fi green drink or whatever. I don't know. It seemed like some sort of subliminal ad for like a future fad treatment or an upcoming treatment that everyone's going to try, like the cryotherapy or the cool sculpting or the Botox or filler or whatever new thing that they're testing out. But anyways, these IVs I think did something because they all looked beautiful skin wise at the dinner that they're about to go to. And maybe it was the lighting too, I don't know. But before we get into that dinner, at this point, I got the same vibes as the last cast trips of the Beverly Hills season last season, where they all seemed to be sick of each other by the end and were just finding any excuse to not have to be around or film with each other. So that's what this whole trip reminded me of at the very beginning. But anyways, let's keep going to everyone now getting ready for dinner out on the town, where Gina is pulling a Shannon from earlier this season by using a blow dryer to steam Emily's dress. Now, as they are waiting for the rest of the group to get ready, Emily is trying to rid Noella of a spider that was in her hair in the most dramatic way possible, followed by Jen coming in fearless as Gina is recounting the size and species of the spider as a tarantula light. But then they arrive at the table at the restaurant. This is where things are going to get heated, so buckle up. After weathering the cobblestone entry, which was similar to earlier this season, the pier boardwalk like entries to restaurants they go to, where they are ordering, and Heather makes a point to subtly bring up Terry and how he usually likes to order the entire side of the menu as kind of a subtle brag to kind of how much money they have or whatever, which to me canceled the aforementioned relatable scene of her unpacking herself. Anyways, before we keep going, this whole scene was weird to me as I was rewatching it a couple times to put this together, where they played musical chairs at this table so many times in this scene before getting to the meat of the scene. I was so confused. I don't know. I've never seen that before with these. Usually they know where they're sitting when they walk in, and you can, as a viewer, can just track it. But as I watched closer the second and third time, I was like, wasn't that person just sitting next to that person? That person, maybe they went to the bathroom or something. I don't know, but it was just very weird. I think they were probably setting up the cameras, and maybe they needed to adjust a few things because they knew it was going to get crazy and they needed to get this scene perfect. I don't know. But anyways, after a cheers with eye contact, of course, that's very important to Heather, Emily suggests playing a game where everyone says something embarrassing that no one knows about them. And as you can guess, this will take a nosedive very quick, considering we saw a preview last week of what would happen. But it starts out pretty friendly, fun, and innocent, with Heather saying she has really ugly feet. Apparently that wasn't a secret, and they all laughed. Shannon said her used Gucci Seville was her first car, where Gina was not getting why that was embarrassing, but Shannon basically said, well, because it was gaudy and obnoxious. Gina then goes, telling a story of climbing into a backseat of a car she thought was a 2-door car that was actually a 4-door car. That is embarrassing. Then Jen goes and says she was engaged 7 times. Now, they all seem shocked by this, but I was not, considering I have watched basically every season of every Housewives ever in America. And still, no one has beaten Danielle Staub from New Jersey, who I believe at this point is up to about 21 engagements in her lifetime, which we learned recently that the reason that Danielle Staub has been engaged that many times is because she tells men when she meets them she's a virgin and she will not put out until she gets a ring on her finger. You can have your opinion on that. I think it's smart if your goal is to get engaged and brag about how many times you've been engaged. But I think Danielle was open in saying it relates to some of her childhood trauma or early life trauma. So anyways, then Emily says to Heather she wants to take it up a notch and asks Heather what her first impression of Shannon was when she met her all those years back. Heather says she thought Shannon had great style and was super cool. Now we got a flashback to them first meeting, and I forgot that they met because the home builder of Heather's current home, which wasn't built when she was first on the show, took Heather over to Shannon's house with David to show him what was possible. And I believe they're the same builder. So I forgot that was how we were introduced to Shannon on the show. Now, Heather then says everyone being a mom in this group is the common bond between the group, and says she wants everyone to do well and be successful and that there's room for everyone. Which then she goes on to say, though, that she doesn't like mean people or liars or shit stirrers, leading to Shannon calling out Emily as a shit stirrer, clarifying that the fun competition between kind of the Big Apple group and the Orange County group from a few episodes back when they were having dueling parties and trips or whatnot, Shannon clarified that she was saying that and using that FaceTime as a way to spice up her party, not as a competitive thing between the girls. Emily, of course, isn't buying this and that excuse and channels her inner Lisa Rinna from Beverly Hills to say, just own it. Of course it was a competition. You said blah, 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 blah. But then Gina agrees with Emily, and then we get another tease of Gina and Emily rehashing their continued issues, but we're going to have to wait for that. But Heather then butts in again, saying she thought Shannon was calling to ask about her podcast. Shannon defends herself, saying, sorry, I don't know your entire itinerary. I was calling to ask how you were doing. You could have brought it up podcast yourself. Then Noella steps in, defending Shannon again, saying, at least she's been consistent on this, I'll give her that, saying she thinks Shannon is getting way too much heat on this. Why would Shannon be jealous of Heather? But of course, Heather then tries to silence Noella, saying, Noella, we don't know you. We have history. Shut up and just let me speak. And then proceeds to scold Noella about, quote unquote, the art of conversation being one speaks and one listens, where Noella, in her short, sort of iconic, at this point, unbothered, subtle shade, responds to Heather's claim that she isn't capable of listening with, I've done debate club, I've worked on presidential campaigns. How did I get through life without a Heather Dubrow class on how to communicate? Love every second of Noella doing this because she's calm, but she gets just heated enough to get under Heather's skin. I just love every second of it. But anyways, Heather then redirects back to Shannon, saying, I was excited when you called because I thought you were calling to kiss my ass, basically. Because apparently being on good terms with Heather is kissing her ass. Shannon then says, you make sense, but I was in a space of worrying about my party that I had been preparing for. So I thought just asking how you were doing seemed like a nice enough gesture, but clearly it was not. Now, I would agree with Shannon saying Heather does seem like she likes to pick on Shannon, which I think is because, like Noella said, she thinks Shannon is weak. And I don't blame Heather, though, because a lot of behavior Shannon displays is from weakness. I've touched on this a few weeks ago, or last week, regarding John Jansen's reaction to the whole thing and what I think their relationship is like. But anyways, and how I think she kind of is a whiny person when she's around a man or needs a man to help her, whatever. Anyway, Shannon then sheds some tears, clearly out of frustration with feeling like she is never enough, followed by Heather saying, okay, you win. coupled with the iconic Heather eye roll, which was the official, I think, switch flip of Heather being unmasked, because then she starts to really heat up after Emily calls out Shannon about saying Gina needs to put a pin in her ego, where Gina then tells Noella to stop interjecting on this and to be being supportive to Shannon, but not her. Noella then says, well, the reason I'm closer to Shannon is because I relate to her having a big, juicy, yummy heart. And of course, everyone takes that as Noella saying that everyone else does not have one of those, which takes this whole dinner up another notch after another dismissive look from Heather towards Noella, and Shannon trying to stay still as she's trying not to have any more shots fired her way. And Jen was just sitting there kind of quiet, trying to figure out what was going on. But anyways, this was followed by Heather questioning Noella's claim others say hurtful things, not her, where then Heather brings up the claim by Noella Heather slammed people against the wall at the Nobu party at the beginning of the season. Now, in the preview, it looked like Noella brought that up on her own, but in this scene, the way we saw it, it was Heather that clearly brought up this claim and is not letting this claim die, even though at this point, it had only been brought up between Heather and Noella, and it hadn't been brought up any other time on camera again with the whole group, which to me indicates it was really bothering Heather, and it actually might be true, and she's really on the defense about this. I don't know, but Noella then gives Heather a chance to not go there. Says, are we really going there? Do you really want me to talk about this? But clearly we've kind of reached a point of no return at this point, and everything is going to be aired out now. I was shocked that Heather actually brought up this claim. I think the smart thing for her to do was, if it's not true and it hasn't really been brought up with the whole group, why even give it any more light? But then we get a whole recounting of the rumor in front of the whole group and end up having Noella say, well, I heard someone tell me this happened. I didn't see it with my own two eyes, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. In reference to the things we saw besides the camera push and shove of the camera by Heather, which we saw that on camera, so she can't deny that one. And this is when Heather is getting angry because she thinks this is a dangerous rumor Noella is perpetuating, and now calls Noella a liar, even though Noella just denied it being a lie. Where Noella then shares she texted Heather the next day saying she was happy to shut down talks of the shoving against the wall, where Heather, in kind of a passive-aggressive, sarcastic way, says, oh, you're such a good friend for that. Then Noella says Heather came after her in the podcast room to the entire group, but Heather remembers it the opposite. We then get the clip of that scene where it does look like Heather kind of started it with Noella and was kind of baiting her into starting something or backtracking on her, whatever. But Noella still isn't backing down on the rumor at this point and says she is holding Heather accountable because no one else is. And I agree with that, and I think this might be Noella's saving grace on the show, if nothing else, which I would be okay with. But then Noella asks Emily, oh, so you didn't see anything either? Where Emily's like, I didn't see anything. As Heather is getting up and storming off, Noella is like, I'm bringing you in, Emily, because we compared notes, which was kind of like a Vicky move where it's kind of like a subtle, like quick thing to kind of get it off, but not like be too in her face. But in her confessional Emily says, she didn't say anything because she didn't see anything with her own eyes in the subterranean. The fact that she called it a subterranean was kind of pretentious and annoying to me, even though I know that's what they're called in like these mega mansions in California. But anyways, I believe that Emily isn't dumb enough to say something she didn't see. And because she's an attorney, she knows the ramifications of that. But anyways, speaking of pretentious, Heather is now outside the restaurant, now being consoled by Emily, as Heather is threatening to have Terry get her a jet here by the morning to pick her up. Another pretentious, obnoxious moment at this point. By Heather, because why couldn't she say, oh, he can get me a flight for tomorrow or whatever, or I can get a flight by tomorrow, whatever. And just shows that they don't actually own their private plane. She just likes to throw that around, even though they just charter the plane. Anyways, after Heather threatens that if Noella is still at the house when they return, she's going to hotel until she can leave, which is kind of a subtle way of Heather saying, if Noella isn't fired from the show, then I'm quitting. It's either her or me kind of thing. Where Emily convinces Heather to stay because leaving has Noella winning this and giving her word more credibility at this point. But Heather in this scene is continuing her pattern of leaving when she can't take the heat of the fire she fanned the flames of or even started herself. We had the first party where she shoved the camera because things weren't going her way. We had the Cabo dinner where she got up and left when Noella wasn't giving her what she wanted. We had last week at the brain scan party when Noella interrupted her and she walked away again. And other occasions we can probably pull up from her original run on the show. But Heather just said in the scene she didn't like the pot stirrers, mean people, or liars, but in basically the next breath brought up the claim to stir the pot and to kind of bait Noella into doing whatever. Then she was mean in her response to Noella, kind of mean girl, immature, tantrum like, and might even be lying about how she is reacting, or given how she is reacting to the claim she brought up herself, which was basically the whole story was dead at this point. No one was going to bring it up. Heather might at this point be entering, I think, Shannon territory of overreacting to the point where it may actually be true what's being claimed. Of course, there is a chance Heather is reacting this way as kind of a fight or flight moment. But I agree with Noella that this isn't how an innocent person acts. Same with Emily when she was brought into this, which may be why Emily went over to Heather to kind of get her to stay because she didn't want to fight this battle alone. I don't know. But we could tell though at this dinner that this scene, Heather was really trying to ice Noella out, but it didn't work. In fact, I think Noella solidified her place next season just for getting Heather to this point. And I think she could actually lean into this even more. We'll get to more on this, what actually really has been happening behind the scenes this season later when I get into what Kelly Dodd said about this on her episode. But anyways, we are now back or on the way back to the house, and everyone is in the Sprinter van together after, when you can imagine this isn't going to go well, but after Heather notices Shannon is talking to Noella outside as they're walking to the van, which makes Heather think Shannon is the enemy now, while overhearing Shannon say she sees Noella's point of view. Heather is then glaring, as you see here, at Noella as she enters the car and continues to call Noella a liar, trying to get her to say she didn't see anything and nothing happened, saying, I have a family and I have children. How dare you? That's so damaging. Apologize. Then in the back seat, as Noella and Heather are still arguing on both sides of Jen, Shannon is bringing up how this is similar to last year when Gina and Emily brought up rumors about her boyfriend John and how damaging that was to his reputation. But then, as Noella is looking back saying, I hate this is happening on day one, Emily is going off saying, stop acting so innocent, Noella, with your stupid hair thing and your damsel in distress act, blah, 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 blah. Which Gina's like, oh, crap, that was a lot, but kind of funny. I'm glad you're doing this. Where then Heather basically tells Noella, oh, shut up. And then kind of under her breath a little bit. And Noella says, did you just tell me to shut up? And Heather goes, yeah, I did, Noella. Shut up. then Gina is basically just laughing in the back, kind of a nervous laugh at this point at how ridiculous this is and how out of hand this is. But then Shannon gets mad at Gina for laughing, saying, this isn't funny. This is affecting our families and blah, 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 blah. We're all stressed and blah, 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 blah. And Heather is now yelling at Shannon, making it about her. So it's just like this whole, everyone's just fighting with everyone except for Jen. Jen's just kind of in the middle. I don't know what I guess she's going to be peacemaker. I don't know. But anyways, this car ride gave me flashbacks to the Ireland trip ride back to the airport. I believe was at the end of Heather's last season on the show before she got quote unquote fired or let go or demoted or whatever, where she was whispering to Megan King Edmonds about the blow up between Kelly, Tamara, Vicky, and Shannon, where there was, I think the allegation of, I think it was Shannon's husband beating her, and that was from Vicky, and it was told by Tamara, and it was this huge game of telephone, and it just completely went out of hand. And in that episode, Heather was calling Kelly trash, like in Megan's ear, and she was doing the whole playing with her hair and like looking at her face as she was crying, which that'll come up in a moment. There's been a ton of flashbacks this season. It's kind of interesting. But anyways, they are now back at the house where Emily and Gina are drunk and helping each other get ready for the wind down of the night as Shannon is trying to mend the broken group. I'm thinking it's a double meaning again of trying to survive on the show. But Heather seems to think no one is defending her, even though that's not true. They're just trying. Emily was defending her, and seems to be in survival mode for some reason. We won't know for sure, but I can imagine. I think it's because the rumors are true. And is doing the whole, like I just said, the whole playing with her friend thing. I'm just sad, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I think it's the move that she does to kind of exert dominance over someone or kind of like subtly threaten them. I don't know. Let me know what you think of that. But over to the side with Shannon and Jen, Heather is now wanting to put Shannon and her issues to the side for now because they seem very small in comparison to what's going on. But then gives an example of what if I said Shannon is a racist pig and steals money. To kind of to give an analogy or example of how damaging that would be if she said that. Shannon clearly didn't like Heather giving that example. I personally think Heather may actually think those things, and this was her subtle way of saying, I could say blank, blank, and blank, but I'm not going to. Where it's like you put it out there, but you pretend like you weren't actually going to say it. That kind of thing. Even though I don't think what Heather said is equal to what is being accused or what Heather's being accused of. But anyways, Shannon then makes a good point in saying that her and Heather have very similar reactions to lies about them. But then we get a flashback to years ago of Heather doing this to Shannon during the whole "you threw me out of your house" saga, when the whole email about the marital issues between Shannon and David apparently were spread by Heather. So lots of history here. But Heather then claims an apology and admittance of it being untrue would have her forget it quickly. I don't know if I believe her on that. But anyways, back inside, Heather is still making her rounds now with Gina and Emily, and Noella then enters, asking if everything's okay. And she seemed more concerned before she learned it was Heather that was the one that was upset with everybody, which of course Heather takes poorly, where now Noella is begging for backup from the group as how to make this better. And now Heather has walked away and saying, you can make this better by not lying about me or whatever, in kind of a subtle passive-aggressive way as she's walking away. Heather then tries to deflect by asking the chef, how are you making those fries? It's kind of like pretending to be unbothered, but really is really bothered. But then Noella is clearly trying to make things better and doesn't want to ruin the trip. And she's reaching out directly to Heather in the kitchen across the room. And she starts respectfully and sincerely by saying, let me know when you're ready. I'm happy to talk and air this out. But, and so Noella added this but, basically saying she hates that this came out, but there is stuff I need to talk about with you, blah, blah, blah. And Heather just says, you know what, not right now. I'm not ready right now. And then she finally just thinks on it. And Heather goes, you know what, fuck it. Let's have the chat right now. And kind of gives this whole game on sort of attitude. But we are going to have to wait until next week to figure out or find out what happens. Not only with the conversation between Heather and Noella, but the rest of the trip, which I'm hearing that the next couple episodes might be the last of the season, and they're going to end it basically here in Aspen. So let's react to this final scene, then we'll get into some of the after show thoughts and Kelly and her fiance husband Rick's exposing the behind the scenes of this. So as far as the claim Noella is making toward Heather, I think Heather reacting as she is to the claim could be just as bad, if not more damaging than the claim itself, considering we haven't seen any proof of the shoving against the wall yet. But whether it's calling someone trash or openly manipulating, i.e. reminiscent of the Todrick Hall on Celebrity Big Brother situation, which I'll have a video coming out on that very soon, or you yourself lying or throwing these tantrums, and even stuff not related to this claim, like exploiting your children or bad reviews for you and your husband's businesses. Some would say also showing off wasteful, extravagant wealth, or even the pushing of the cameraman that we did see on camera, where that's basically violating someone's space and disrespecting the crew, which as an actress could be very bad for her and make her look very difficult to work with. All of that could come and haunt your family. And those are all things that you've done on your own. None of that had to do with Noella. So I think Heather is, deflecting a lot of the things that she probably doesn't think are going to look well on camera onto Noella, trying to blame her for lying. And I think implying that maybe everything bad about Heather is a lie. I don't know. But I think, I'm going to say, I like Noella standing up to Heather because it is clearly working in exposing Heather for who she is, despite what she says she is. Heather came off really unlikable to me in this episode, even more than any other episode this season, even though I've been calling it out the whole time. The masks finally came off, even though I didn't see through it, or I saw through it the entire time, especially knowing how unlikable she was towards the end of her original run on the show, i.e. the Ireland car ride I just mentioned. Also, this to me was reality TV gold because I could tell this was the true feelings coming out from everybody, and everyone is on the edge of speaking the entire truth. And that's what I want to see in reality TV. I want to see the real thoughts and real feelings towards each other. No tap dancing around it. And especially with them directly talking about breaking the fourth wall, I think they could have gone even further, saying exactly what Kelly said, which I will share in a few seconds. As far as any after show Watch What Happens Live, there was not a Watch What Happens Live this week, but we did have an after show where Heather seemed to think Noella brought up the specific claim with no like reason to bring it up, but we saw the show. It was Heather that brought up the specific claim. It wasn't going to come up, and even Noella gave her a chance to not talk about it, and Heather didn't stop it. Even Emily said that Noella started it, and that's just not true from what we saw. And it hadn't come up with the entire group until that moment when Heather kind of brought it up and baited Noella into saying it, which I think at this point it's going to backfire on Heather. But the comment sections on the after show underneath showed many expressing the feelings I do, and I'm sure a lot of you did, where we saw what we saw. You can't tell us what we saw was wrong. They only gave us what they could work with. Just saying. And we're not falling for the picture they're trying to paint of the show. But anyways, as far as Rick and Kelly Dodd, their recap, she mentioned how she actually begged to go to Aspen many times while she was on the show. And so she was actually saying this was kind of her trip, and she was jealous of it in a lot of ways, and kind of said how it would have made more sense for her to go to Aspen on the show because she knows a lot of people there and she goes there all the time. Now, she had pretty similar takes to me and many in the comment sections across the web I've seen about this episode and the season in general. One great point Kelly made, I thought she put it really well, was how the Noella we saw at this dinner being serious and not just like playful, airy, uncomfortable Noella that we kind of see, kind of cutesy, uncomfortable Noella. That is the best Noella, because if not for anything, her staying calm while reading the other cast members and getting under Heather's skin in particular, all that is a good side of Noella I like. Then Kelly called out, though, Heather for lying about not knowing about Gina's DUI before Shannon told her after they first started filming and met this season. And she showed proof and a clip from Heather's podcast that Tamara Judge was a guest on many years ago, talking about the DUI as I think it was unfolding in real time at the time. Maybe Heather forgot, but I don't believe Heather to be the forgetful type. She seems to be the type that conveniently forgets things when either trying to save face as to not look stupid or to kind of hide her manipulation after being called out. I would know what those things look like because I encounter many of those people in my daily life, whether it's in my career or not. So I'll just put it out like that. As far as the actual allegations against Heather by Noella from the Nobu party, Kelly exposed text messages between her and Emily right after they filmed that Nobu party scene at Heather's at the beginning of the season, where Emily appeared to be shocked by Heather's behavior after just meeting her basically that day. And it looks like Heather set the tone that first party of scaring a lot of the other cast members into submission, other than Noella. And according to Kelly, the person that ran up to tell Noella what happened was a producer on the show. So that is why Noella just says, someone told me, without giving any more specifics on who it was, to not like break the fourth wall completely down any more than they already have this season. But I think, and according to Kelly, again, there was so much more behind the scenes regarding Heather that would completely expose and potentially destroy the entire show, where they'd have to build it from scratch again. And some of the allegations that are out there, not specifically from Kelly, are that Heather had members of production fired after that first incident we saw when she pushed the camera, and that Kelly, according to her, she still keeps in touch with production and says if this show ever does completely get canceled, she will expose everything. And so she said that's probably even juicier than the show. There's probably a better show behind the scenes happening this whole season than actually on the show. So that to me was very wild. So let me know what you think of this entire episode. Pretty crazy what happened, and there's going to be more fallout in the next couple weeks leading up to the reunion, and of course going into next season, which I'm thinking I want this whole cast back. Maybe one or two of them go down to a friend role and have to prove themselves, kind of like Luann did in New York, and then maybe bring them back if they do well. Maybe bring back some more OGs. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but let me know what you think wherever you were able to comment, and I want to thank you for joining me for this recap and react for Real Housewives of Orange County Season 16, Episode 15, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.